In every direction you look, north, south, east, west, you find the same strange truth. Every modern nation, from the strongest economies to the most fragile, carries debt. Trillions for some, billions for others, and year after year, the numbers rise higher, almost as if gravity doesn't apply to them. But behind those numbers lies a question so simple, so obvious, that most people never ask it. If every country is in debt, then who is the creditor? Who is the mysterious lender behind the world's governments? Where is all this money coming from? And who, ultimately, holds the world in their hands? To understand this, we have to strip away the layers of complexity that surround global finance, because what looks like a clean, orderly system is actually a maze of obligations, promises, and money that doesn't behave the way people think it does. Let's begin with a simple observation. When you hear that a country owes money, your mind imagines two nations sitting across from each other, one lending, one borrowing. But in reality, national debt rarely works that way. Countries don't owe money to each other the way neighbors do. The truth is far less direct and far more revealing. Take the United States. Most people believe it owes its debt to foreign powers, perhaps China or Japan. But the largest creditor of the United States is actually the United States itself. Pension funds, insurance companies, private banks, investment firms, and the Federal Reserve collectively hold the majority of American government bonds. In other words, the US government borrows from money circulating within its own economy. Japan is even more extreme. Over 90% of its enormous national debt is held domestically by its own institutions and its own citizens. Europeans, Canadians, Australians, many of them follow the same pattern. Their governments borrow not from rival nations, but from investors, financial institutions, and sometimes from their own central banks. So if the largest creditors of most countries are not foreign nations, then what exactly is happening? The answer is this: global debt isn't a single chain with a single creditor. It is a web, a network of lenders, investors, funds, corporations, banks, and central banks. Every strand connected to another, every debt matched by an asset. When one country issues a government bond, someone buys it. When a pension fund invests in sovereign debt, someone receives the interest. When a central bank creates money to buy government bonds, it becomes both part of the debtor and part of the creditor. This is where the picture becomes more complicated and far more interesting, because once you understand that most government debt isn't owed to other governments, you begin to see something deeper. You begin to realize that the modern world is built on self-sustaining debt, debt that never truly has to be paid off, debt that rolls, expands, and evolves, debt that acts as the engine of the global financial system. Here's the unsettling truth: if every country on Earth paid back every dollar of its debt tomorrow, the world economy would collapse. Not because governments would fall, but because the money supply would evaporate. Modern money is not created by printing machines. It is created through borrowing, through loans, through credit. Without debt, money disappears. This is the foundation of the global financial system. Money is created when someone takes on debt. A government borrows, a bank lends, a business takes a loan. And with every new loan, new money enters circulation. This means something extraordinary, something most people never realize. The creditor of the world is not a single nation. It is a system of lenders, institutions, and mechanisms that create money through debt and maintain global stability by keeping that debt alive. But if debt is the lifeblood of modern economies, who controls the arteries? Who regulates the flow? Who decides when more money enters the world and when it stops? To answer that, we must look at the institutions that operate above governments, above borders, and sometimes above democratic oversight. The central banks, the bond markets, the financial institutions that shape nations from behind the curtain. And that brings us to the next part of the story. To understand who actually lends money to nations, we need to step into a world that operates quietly, discreetly, and often without the public's awareness. A world where the real power of global finance lives, because money doesn't move randomly. Debt doesn't grow on its own. Every loan, every bond, every interest payment flows through institutions designed to keep the world economy running. And at the center of this system are two forces: central banks and the global bond market. Let's start with central banks. Every major country has one: the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of England. These institutions are not ordinary banks. They don't serve customers. They don't operate for profit. They exist for something far more important: maintaining the stability of a nation's entire financial system. But here's where the story becomes strange. Central banks have the ability to create money with no limit, not through printing cash, but through digital creation, the kind that shows up on balance sheets after a single decision. When a government needs to borrow money, it issues bonds. When investors buy those bonds, the government receives funding. But if those investors don't buy enough, the central bank steps in. With a few keystrokes, it creates new money, buys the government's debt, and becomes the creditor. This means something extraordinary. A country can owe money to an institution that created that money out of nothing, not saved up, not earned, not transferred, created. Modern finance allows governments to borrow money created by their own monetary authority. And this isn't theoretical. Japan does it constantly. The United States did it extensively during economic crises. Europe depends on it during instability. Central banks have become lenders of last resort, not only for commercial banks, but for entire governments. So who is the creditor in this case? Technically, the central bank, but in reality, the system is lending to itself. Now let's widen the lens. Beyond central banks lies an even larger force, the global bond market, a marketplace so massive, so powerful, that it influences the fate of countries. This market includes pension funds, investment firms, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, and private banks, millions of investors around the world holding trillions of dollars in debt. When a government needs money, it doesn't knock on the door of another country. It steps into this market, offers its bonds, and waits to see who buys them. Sometimes the buyers are domestic institutions, sometimes foreign investors, sometimes global funds managing wealth from hundreds of thousands of people. This is why the real answer to the question, who is the creditor, is not a person or a country, but a network, a decentralized, interconnected ecosystem of institutions with the power to fund or deny the spending of nations. If these investors trust a country, they buy its bonds. If they lose trust, interest rates rise, debt becomes expensive, and the country suffers. This is how the bond market disciplines nations, not through military power, not through diplomacy, but through money. And then there is the layer above even that. Institutions like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and regional development banks. These entities lend money to countries that can't borrow affordably from markets, and in return, they require reforms, restructuring, and policy changes, a financial lifeline with strategic conditions. So when you look at the global debt system, you find three major creditors. 1. Domestic investors, pensions, banks, and institutions inside the country. 2. International investors, the global bond market. 3. Central banks, the ultimate lenders with the power to create money. Together, they form a structure where no single entity owns the world's debt. Instead, it is distributed across millions of balance sheets, but controlled by a surprisingly small number of influential institutions. And that leads to the next question. If these institutions hold the debt, who controls them? Who decides how much money is created, how much is lent, and what the interest rates will be? Because in a world where debt is the foundation of the global financial system, the ability to influence borrowing is the ability to influence everything. To understand who truly stands behind global debt, we must examine something far more fundamental than borrowing or lending. We must look at the one element that connects every government, every institution, and every financial system on earth, the creation of money itself. Because once you understand how money is created, the answer to who is the creditor becomes clearer and far more unsettling. Let's begin with a concept few people fully grasp. In the modern world, money does not exist first and then get lent out. Instead, it is created at the exact moment a loan is made. If a bank approves a mortgage, it doesn't hand you money stored in a vault. It simply credits your account electronically and records your debt. The money is created by the act of borrowing. And when governments borrow, the same mechanism operates at a much larger scale. Government debt creates money in three major ways. 1. Commercial banks create new money when they buy government bonds or issue loans backed by them. 2. Investors move existing money into government bonds, which shifts resources but keeps the system liquid. 3. Central banks create new money when they purchase government debt directly. This means something crucial. Debt is not the consequence of money. It is the source of money. Your currency is someone's debt. Your savings are someone's liability. Your bank balance exists because somewhere a loan was created. In this system, the creditor is not a single actor. It's a process. But who benefits from this process? To answer that, think about the institutions closest to the creation of money. Those with the authority to issue credit, manipulate interest rates, and stabilize or destabilize economies through policy decisions. They are not voted into power. They do not appear on ballots. They do not campaign. Yet their decisions affect inflation, employment, growth, recession, and the financial stability of entire nations. These are the central banks. When a central bank lowers interest rates, borrowing becomes cheap, money creation accelerates, government debt expands, investors rush to buy bonds, confident that the central bank will support the market. When a central bank raises interest rates, borrowing becomes expensive, economies tighten, debt becomes harder to manage, and governments, companies, and households feel the pressure instantly. This is the quiet power no one sees, the ability to influence the entire global supply of money with a single policy decision. And who influences central banks? This is where things become even less visible. Central banks are often described as independent. In reality, their structure is a hybrid of government oversight, private influence, and institutional continuity. They operate above political cycles, above public opinion, and sometimes above national governments themselves. But the most important force shaping the global financial system is not a single institution. It is the relationship between all of them. Think of it like this. Governments borrow, central banks support the bond market, commercial banks expand credit, investors buy and trade government debt, and the entire system grows based on constant borrowing. Debt becomes currency, currency becomes debt, markets react to policy, policy reacts to markets. It is a cycle with no beginning and no end, and at the center of this cycle lies a truth almost no one realizes. There is no single creditor. The world owes money to a system that continuously recreates itself. The real creditor is the global financial architecture. But there is one final layer, one last force that shapes global debt more than any other. A force that determines what governments can do, how much they can borrow, and what consequences they face if they cross the invisible lines of financial order. And that's where the story reaches its deepest point. If you've followed the story this far, you've already uncovered truths that most people never see. You now understand that global debt is not a simple chain of borrowing and lending. It is a vast, interconnected ecosystem, one where money is created through loans, where governments borrow from their own institutions, where central banks stabilize the system, and where the bond market silently disciplines nations. But there's one final question left, a question far more important than who lends or how much is owed. What holds this entire system together? Because when you strip everything down, the bonds, the interest rates, the central banks, the investors, you discover something astonishing. The global debt system is held together by confidence. Not gold, not vaults, not physical assets. Confidence. Confidence that governments will repay. Confidence that currencies will hold value. Confidence that markets will remain stable. Confidence that money created from debt will continue to function as money. This is the invisible force that keeps the world running. If investors lose confidence in a country, its borrowing costs explode. If citizens lose confidence in their currency, it collapses. If markets lose confidence in central banks, the entire financial system shakes. Confidence is the real creditor of the modern world, because without it, no institution could lend. Without it, no government could function. Without it, money itself would fail. And so the world's financial architecture works tirelessly to maintain this confidence. Central banks signal stability through policy. Governments promise growth and repayments. Investors search for safe assets in government bonds. Global institutions monitor nations and intervene when needed. Every part of the system is designed for one purpose: to keep the world believing that the system will continue to work. Because here is the final, quiet truth. If every country is in debt, and if debt creates the money we use, then the creditor is not a country, a billionaire, or a mysterious global elite. The true creditor is the global financial system, itself a structure powered not by physical wealth, but by collective belief. This is why the world can owe more than it produces. This is why debt can grow indefinitely. This is why no country ever truly pays off its national debt. Because in a system built on confidence, the goal is not to eliminate debt. The goal is to sustain it. Debt becomes the fuel for growth. Growth becomes the justification for more debt. And round it goes. So when someone asks, who does the world owe money to? The real answer is this: to everyone, and to no one, to investors, and to itself, to a system built on promises and held together by trust. In the end, global debt is not the story of a single creditor. It is the story of a world that runs on faith in its own financial machinery. A world where money is belief, and belief is power. A world where the most valuable asset of all is confidence.